Welcome to the second expression of analogical. Today I'd like to talk about something that's on my mind quite often, especially since last year. Government is religion. Religion is government. So I want to start off today with a story. In high school, I was one of those kids that got in trouble for not standing up to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I remember, I think this was in my 11th grade year, and it ended up being a big thing where the teacher went to the principal's office and I was in trouble. I got sent out of class. I think for a few days I had to go outside of the classroom when the Pledge of Allegiance was being recited in the morning. There was a whole thing. I ended up writing a letter to my teacher though, and she listened and she understood my reasons why. And after that, she apologized and we didn't have any problem with it again. I just sat down, stayed in my seat while everyone else was saying the pledge, and that was the end of it. Other students would look at me, but nobody really challenged me or said anything directly, so I was happy with that. Now, if we look at this picture here, I don't know about you, but to me, this looks like religion. Everyone talks about the separation of church and state, but I think that's a joke. I don't think people really mean it. It sounds good, and people want to believe that, and they want to think that that's what the United States is about, but I don't think people are sincere, usually. And certainly people like these teachers in this photograph, for instance, or public schools in general. I mean, just look at that. These little humans who have no understanding of patriotism, nationalism, the history of the United States, the meaning of flags and symbology or codes, none of that. They're just instructed to participate in these rituals by their teachers, and so they do it. And if they don't do it, they get in trouble and usually end up doing it. So I want to set a precedent with this show here and start off with definitions. What is government? I'm sure everyone has some type of idea of what they think government is, but let's look at the dictionary here. So the first one says the act of governing, exercising authority. The system or form by which a community or other political unit is governed. Alright, let's see what else is down here. Another interesting one, management of the limbs or body. Okay. The act of governing, the exercise of authority, the administration of laws, control, direction, regulation, as in civil, church, or family government. Okay. Maybe a few more here. The exercise of authority in the administration of the affairs of a state, community, or society. The authoritative direction and restraint exercised over the actions of men in communities, societies, or states. So I think we're getting a somewhat clear idea of what is meant by the idea of government. Maybe one more. A ruling or managing, control, system of governing, the body of persons authorized to administer the laws or to govern a state, the territory over which sovereign power extends. All right. Now let's go over to religion. Religion, a strong belief in a supernatural power or powers that control human destiny. An institution to express belief in a divine power. Okay, let's see what else we have here. The outward act or form by which men indicate their recognition of the existence of a god or of gods having power over their destiny, to whom obedience, service, and honor are due. Okay. So I think that paints a fairly clear picture about religion. Let's see if there's anything else here. The recognition of supernatural powers and of the duty lying upon man to yield obedience to these, the performance of our duties of love and obedience toward God, piety, any system of faith and worship, sense of obligation or duty. So, let's go back to that picture. So, sense of duty, obligation, honor. So what do you see in this picture here? We have two adults and we have several children here. One is leading the way by holding the flag, like a fishing rod there. And the teachers are leading the way through prayer. The Pledge of Allegiance. Seems like prayer and worship to me seems to have all of the elements of religion. So I found an interesting article, very short. Apparently this was written in 2002, I believe, from famguardian.org. Now this show is called Analogical because I think analogies are a very good way for us to learn and share experiences with each other. So I like that this guy here starts off talking about analogies. I won't read the entire thing, but I think it has some interesting points. So here we go. I've always enjoyed analogies. In high school, a teacher once criticized me for taking an analogy about Hamlet in an essay too far. But the more valid an analogy is, the further you can take it. One day I was sitting, pondering the meaning of the universe. My thoughts turned to things political, as they often do. I wondered why government has intruded into and gradually, almost completely taken over health, education, and welfare. These have been traditionally the sphere of God as manifested through his earthly worship, religion. That's when it hit me and I realized the cosmic truth. Government is a religion. This fundamental explains all that we need to know about government. The analogy extends as far as any I've ever known. And I agree. He said he realized the cosmic truth that government is religion, and that this explains all that we need to know about government. I think that if we viewed government and spoke about it and analyzed it in the context of a form of religion, that could clear up a lot of problems. Continuing, the ultimate religion of government is, of course, communism. It was Karl Marx who said that religion is the opiate of the masses. In some ways, Marx was correct. One of the side effects of the opiates is euphoria, which is why they are so addictive. Religion provides its adherents a sense of solace and euphoria, for which they may otherwise spend their lives in a frustrating search. In my own case, my religion is Catholicism. So this is the author speaking here, which helps give me a set of standards that I can use to guide my life as a pathway to God. But Marx may have been right in ways that he never anticipated. Opium works by attaching itself to certain sites in the body. It is competitive with other substances at those sites, so if the site is occupied by another substance, the opium can't get there and do its work. It's either one or the other, which goes a long way to explaining the policies of the left. Interesting. I think it goes a long way in explaining the policies of both sides, or any side. Now it says it's competitive with other substances at those sites, so if the site is occupied by another substance, the opium can't get there and do its work. That's interesting. I'm not an expert in this area about how drugs are absorbed into the body, but I find that interesting. Wherever government goes, it must eliminate God. This explains the unceasing efforts of leftists, like the ACLU, in eliminating prayer and religion from schools. Now, we even have the ACLU hinting that it may launch legal efforts to deny Catholic hospitals access to public funds. Okay, he goes on talking about that for a little while. Then he goes on to say, throughout most of history, especially the Christian era, health, education, and welfare were the province of religious bodies. Okay. What else do we have here? So he goes on talking about religion a little more, and then he says, so into this steps man and his religion, government. The first inroad has usually been education. In the United States, it was in Dorchester, Massachusetts. So what he's referring to here is public education or government-run education began in Massachusetts. Welfare followed, and now healthcare. The Gospels tell us that Jesus said to render unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. The problem is that Caesar has never been content with what is his, and always must take from God the things that are rightfully God's. Thus, government has not only invaded God's realm, but eliminated him, and we are led to where we are today. Okay, anything else here? Okay, so isn't the left practicing a religion? Are they not actually worshiping man through government rather than God? I would say this doesn't just apply to the left, this applies to both sides. So the article goes on to say that government has killed God in our schools. Okay, so moving on. Here's another interesting article that's talking about the same subject here. This article was written in July of 2017. It says, at the Celebrate Freedom concert in Washington, D.C. earlier this month, Donald Trump told the crowd that in America, we don't worship government, we worship God. The telling liturgical response from the gathered congregation was a chant of USA, USA. Indeed, 3 weeks after I first moved to the United States with my family, and 1 week into our American public school adventures, my youngest daughter asked me, Mom, did you know that we pray to the flag every morning at school? Consider the ritual surrounding our worship of the flag. In my church, when the gospel is read during a sacramental service, all of the people in attendance who are able stand and turn towards the book, which is elevated in their midst. At the announcement of the reading, many mark their heads, lips, and hearts with a cross. We do the same for the Pledge of Allegiance. The U.S. Flag Code advises, the Pledge of Allegiance should be rendered by standing at attention facing the flag with the right hand over the heart. So again, we're conjuring up this image here. Standing at attention facing the flag with your right hand over your heart. Why? Well, these kids can't ask why, and they probably wouldn't understand the answer, and the teachers probably don't know themselves. So there never is a satisfactory answer for this question. Why? Well, because we said so, basically is what it comes down to. Because that's how it's always been done. Because you just have to do it. It's not done based on reasoning. Okay, this article goes on to say, after an item has been blessed in divine service, so for example, palm leaves, linens used to dress or to wipe up at the altar, a metal chalice, and so on, and has reached the end of its useful service, the preferred method of its disposal is consumption by fire. Palm leaves are often turned to ashes for use the following year on Ash Wednesday, the beginning of the Christian holy season of Lent. Chalices may be melted down and recast. We do the same for the flag. And now, quoting from the flag code, the flag, when it is in such condition that it is no longer a fitting emblem for display, should be destroyed in a dignified way, preferably by burning. Now, I don't know for most people listening if this was news, but this was surprising to me. I had never heard of this. I guess I was just ignorant of the fact. But apparently this is the proper way to dispose of a flag that is what they call unserviceable, meaning unpresentable. So if we go over here, there's another article, website here discussing this specifically. So the flag code dictates that the excessively worn and tattered American flag should be disposed of in a dignified manner. The preferred method is burning. Many American Legions or the Boy Scouts Council and Girl Scouts Council will perform a special retirement ceremony for your American flag and burn it for you. Here, burning the flag signifies purification and a rebirth. Here, burning the flag signifies purification and a rebirth. Now, if that's not religious, I don't know what is. Purification and rebirth. Let's go on here. Despite the common myth, flags that touch the ground do not need to be destroyed. If your flag does touch the ground and it gets dirty, simply wash it. Allowing a flag to touch the ground is disrespectful to the flag, but of course, accidents do happen. Just try to prevent it from happening again. So it's disrespectful to the flag, this idol or graven image that we have children worshiping and the public in general worshiping at sports events, ceremonies, all sorts of events. Repairing. As long as the flag is serviceable, it is acceptable to repair minor damages. While it is permitted to do repairs yourself, taking your flag to a seamstress may be a safer option. Okay, permitted. I didn't know that I needed permission to do anything concerning my property, but okay. To avoid damage to your flag, bring it inside in bad weather and make sure your flagpole or staff is in good condition. I've heard of all of these things. Disposal. According to the flag code, any American flag that is worn, damaged, or tattered beyond repair should be retired in a respectful and dignified manner. The preferred method is burning. This may shock some, since it is a well-known fact that burning the flag is illegal. Okay? This, however, is an exception to the rule. You can burn the flag yourself, making sure it is done in a discreet and professional manner. Or many organizations like the American Legion, the Boy Scouts Council, and the Girl Scouts Council will perform a flag retirement ceremony and burn your flag for you. So it is illegal to burn the flag. I find it interesting that the proper way of disposing of the flag and the way that people protest against the United States is the same. You're supposed to burn the flag. If you wanted to follow their code of proper respect and proper religious worship of the flag, then the proper way to do that is to burn it in the fire. So at first, I thought this was interesting because the protesters and people who worship the flag religiously do the same thing for different reasons. But then I realized, well, really, it's not a different reason. It says if the flag is unserviceable, meaning tattered and torn, that's the reason why you go ahead and burn the entire thing. But in a sense, isn't that what protesters are saying? They're saying that this flag basically is unserviceable, meaning that it doesn't represent what it's supposed to stand for. It doesn't represent them, the protesters, and their values. A lot of times people in protesting against war or the multiple wars that the United States is conducting around the world, they burn the flag. And it's because they think that the United States is doing things that are disgraceful. The way the flag worshippers destroy the flag and the way that protesters destroy the flag is the same. Now, according to the flag code, or it's supposed to be done, where is it? It says you can burn the flag yourself, making sure it is done in a discreet and professional manner. So they say it should be done in a discreet and dignified and professional manner. But, the act is still burning. It goes on to say, although burning is the preferred method, it is also acceptable to seal your old flag in a box or bag and bury it. So, like it's a human being. The most important factor is showing respect to the flag during its disposal. Okay. Again, if that's not religion, then I don't know what is. So if we go back to the previous article, the author goes on to mention Francis Bellamy and the origin of the Pledge of Allegiance. It says that the Pledge of Allegiance has become the creed of the state religion, taught early and often to our children. So again, think of that photo of the children standing there worshiping the flag in the classroom. So the author goes on to mention this person, Reverend Will Mabane Jr. in Buffalo, New York. Okay, grew up in the South in a fairly conservative religious household. He encountered the flag at school and at church, at Boy Scouts, and so on. There was a whole lot of saluting of the flag, he told me. In high school, where he and his friends were among the first African Americans to integrate a previously all-white school, the pledge was recited before football games. Then the national anthem was sung, and the band played Dixie. Will and his friends petitioned the administration to tone down the Southern jingoism, but were ignored. It was around that time that he became aware that the same flag that he had grown up saluting featured prominently in the ceremonies of the KKK. How could he recite a Pledge of Allegiance that talks about liberty and justice for all when white supremacists were using the same symbols to profess and promote their hatred? The author of this article is referring to someone who lived through the time period of racial segregation, and it says they were among the first African Americans to integrate into the previously all-white school. Going on, still today, he says, for me, the words ring hollow. They do not speak to my experience as a black man in this country with 2 African American sons and black colleagues and black friends. It is a lie. All of this preceded the realization, as his faith matured, that the flag and the pledge and the anthem were all idols, and that people seem often to be more interested in worshiping these idols than the cross of Christ. Now, I think it's good that this person points out the fact that the flag is an idol. And I would just have to say that the cross is an idol as well. And if Christians were really following their book, then they wouldn't be worshiping this graven image, this idol. And then lastly, she quotes a priest here. So John White, also an Episcopal priest, addressed the issue of idolatry directly. Quote, I do not say the Pledge of Allegiance, and I have an opportunity each week at Rotary to not do so. For me, I understand my only allegiance to be to Christ. We proclaim one Lord as Christians, and I don't believe that allows for a hierarchy of allegiances. I've only ever been asked about it once, and the asker accepted my answer readily. I don't demand it of others or even preach it overtly, but I think it is the most Christian response allowable. I believe in being a good citizen and participating in communal and political life, and I think being a veteran allows me more space than others might have to follow this belief without pushback. End quote. So here's a priest saying that he personally understands that his allegiance is to Christ or to God, and that he recognizes flag worship and things like that as worshiping 2 masters. So you can't worship 2 masters. It has to be one or the other. You can't worship government and your religion if, as a Christian. It's one or the other, because government is a form of religion. So this guy is a priest, and he recognizes that, but he can't preach it overtly. He doesn't announce it to his congregation, probably because he knows that the idea of the flag worship and patriotism is so ingrained in the people that If he mentioned it outright, it would just upset them and it would divide the church. The article ends saying, "We have a saying in my own religious tradition that praying shapes believing. In other words, the words, symbols, and rituals that we use to express our faith become our faith and predict our actions. So when a child comes home convinced that she is praying to the flag, what are we teaching her to believe about her country, about her religion, and about the real possibility of liberty and justice for all?" What are we teaching these children to believe? So I want to end this expression of analogical with a few quotes. Sometimes when you see quotes online, they're misattributed, but I think the most important thing is to get the message, to look at it and think about what the quote is saying. So the first one here from Thomas Jefferson, it says, "I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them." The next one. "Sometimes I wonder whether the world is being run by smart people who are putting us on or by imbeciles who really mean it." I wonder too. Here's one that I see many times online. "One of the saddest lessons of history is this. If we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back." This one is from Carl Sagan. Next one is from Plato in the Republic. "The heaviest penalty for declining to rule is to be ruled by someone inferior to yourself." Former President Dwight Eisenhower, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense. Under the clouds of war, it is humanity hanging on a cross of iron." Alright, the next one is from Ronald Reagan, worshipped by a lot of people out there. "Government exists to protect us from each other. Where government has gone beyond its limits is in deciding to protect us from ourselves." Think about that in the context of now and last year. It says, "Where government has gone beyond its limits is in deciding to protect us from ourselves." "A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves." Alright. Let's see. Here's another one. James Bovard. "Democracy must be something more than two wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for dinner." Here's another one from Gerald Ford, former president. "A government big enough to give you everything you want is a government big enough to take from you everything you have." So what is my point in reading all of these quotes? All of these people have a similar attitude toward government and a similar caution to humanity about how to regard government. Here's another good one. H.L. Mencken. "The most dangerous man to any government is the man who is able to think things out for himself without regard to the prevailing superstitions and taboos. Almost inevitably, he comes to the conclusion that the government he lives under is dishonest, insane, and intolerable." So I want my listeners to think about that in the context of today's discussion, in the context of this photo here. What do you see? Is this what we should be doing to our children? What purpose is this serving? Who is being served by these rituals? Thank you for listening.